Picture this, right? You have been grinding on this massive, all-consuming project for, well, the better part of a year.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. And you know this exact feeling.
The late nights.
Yes! The stress dreams about margins and typos, the endless cups of lukewarm coffee, and then finally, that glorious moment arrives. You move your cursor, you take a deep breath, and you click submit.
And there is this undeniable physiological adrenaline crash that happens right at that moment. I mean, your brain genuinely believes the threat has passed.
It really does. You lean back in your chair, you feel that literal weight lift off your shoulders, and you think, it is over, I am done.
Which is a great feeling.
It's the best. But welcome to the Dup Dive. Today, we're looking at a strategy document from United Yearbook that argues hitting submit isn't the finish line at all.
Right.
It's actually, well, it's the starting gun.
It's a fascinating paradigm shift, really,
Mm-hmm.
because they are fundamentally challenging how we view project management. And they're using the creation of a school yearbook as their ultimate case study.
Exactly. So the goal of our deep dive today is to really unpack United Yearbook's core philosophy. Because what they're arguing is that creating this massive publication is a continuous, unbroken, year-long journey.
Yeah, it is not just a single deadline that you cross, collapse over, and then completely forget about.
Right. So we're going to examine their specific, their expert advice for what advisors and teams need to do the absolute second they hit that submit button.
And if we look closely, the principles they outline here, about distribution, recognition, archiving, and preparation, I mean, these apply to almost any long-term collaborative endeavor.
Oh, for sure.
It's really about moving an entire team's mindset from a deadline mentality to a life cycle mentality.
So let's break down the difference between those two mentalities. Because reading through this source material, I realized how often I fall into the deadline trap myself.
It's super common.
I used to think of finishing a big project like running a grueling marathon. You cross the finish line, you grab your little foil blanket, and you just collapse. Which, I mean, that is completely natural, but a deadline mentality treats that final submission as a hard stop. Everyone just abandons ship.
Right.
And the dangerous consequence of that is what happens next cycle. The new team, or even the same team after a long break, they have to start from absolute zero. It is incredibly inefficient.
So a better analogy might be like a high-end restaurant kitchen.
Oh, I like that.
Right. When a chef finishes a really chaotic Friday night dinner service, they don't just turn off the lights and walk out.
No, of course not.
They don't leave dirty pans and dull knives for the Saturday morning crew. They stay, they clean, they prep the stations, they take inventory, because they know Saturday dinner is coming.
That captures it perfectly. A life cycle mentality recognizes that the end of one cycle is intrinsically linked to the beginning of the next one.
United Yearbook's entire framework is designed to capture the momentum you've built up over the year, rather than just letting it, dissipate into thin air.
Okay, so let's look at how they suggest capturing that momentum.
Yeah.
Starting with the immediate aftermath of the project. We're transitioning from the abstract digital world of uploading files to the visceral physical reality of thousands of heavy printed books arriving on a loading dock.
Right, and more importantly, you are dealing with the people who actually made them. You're managing a profound human experience here.
Yeah.
You can't just take a product that represents thousands of hours of human effort and treat it like some generic commodity.
Right. United Yearbook is very clear that you have to actively plan your distribution day. And reading their suggestions, I have to admit, my initial reaction was a bit cynical.
Really? How so?
Well, I'm thinking about the exhausted advisor, right? The source recommends creating dedicated yearbook signing areas, setting up tables organized by grade levels.
Being a curated music playlist, yeah.
Exactly. Building photo backdrops for social media, and even having massive reserves of extra Sharpies on hand.
They really want it to be a highly choreographed, memorable event.
But let me push back on that for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of a project leader who has just spent 9 months wrangling teenagers, hunting down missing photos, and, proofreading 400 pages.
It's exhausting.
Very. So why on earth do I need to suddenly become an event planner and a DJ? Isn't distribution just the logistics of handing someone an object they paid for?
I mean, if you treat it like a trip to the DMV, yes.
Right.
But let's look at the psychology of what United Yearbook is recommending here. If you just hand out these books from a cardboard box in a silent, fluorescent-lit cafeteria, you're implicitly telling your staff and your audience that the yearbook is just a transaction.
Like handing out a math syllabus.
Exactly, like a syllabus.
Yeah.
And nobody celebrates a math syllabus.
No, they definitely don't.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But by putting in this specific environmental effort, the music, the backdrops, the dedicated signing areas, you are fundamentally transforming a bound stack of paper into a celebrated community artifact.
Okay, I see.
This effort cements the value of the students' work. Think about it. They spent months agonizing over layouts and captions. By throwing basically a premiere party for the book, you prove to them, visually and experientially, that their grueling work actually matters to the culture of the school.
Oh, wow. So you're giving them the emotional payoff. It's the difference between, say, self-publishing a novel and just keeping it on your hard drive versus having a proper book launch at a bookstore where people are actually lining up for your signature.
That is a perfect comparison. And that validation is a powerful antidote to burnout. When people feel genuinely recognized, that exhaustion you mentioned before, it starts to morph back into energy.
Yeah.
And that directly ties into their next major focus, which is actively thanking and recognizing the staff.
Yeah, the source outlines some really great ideas for this, hosting an end-of-year celebration, naturally, but they also suggest the advisor write actual, physical, handwritten thank you notes to the editors and staff.
Which is huge. I mean, in an era of quick text messages, a handwritten note from a mentor is something a student might keep for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
It's a tangible artifact of their competence.
They also recommend creating quirky staff awards. The examples they give are things like best photographer, best caption writer, best layout designer, or most reliable.
Yeah.
And at first glance, that sounds like a standard pizza party gimmick, but is there a deeper retention strategy going on here?
Oh, absolutely. Think about corporate talent retention. If an employee feels their specific, unique contribution is invisible, they leave.
Right.
By calling out the, quote, best caption writer, you aren't just giving them a piece of paper. You are validating a highly specific skill set.
You're telling that teenager, I saw the exact effort you put into the details, and you are uniquely good at this.
Yes. That is how you build a pipeline of future editors. It makes them want to come back and do it all again next year.
And they top it off by taking a group photo of the current staff so it can be included in next year's book. You are literally printing their legacy into the institution.
Which is the perfect bridge, really,
Yeah.
because once the pizza boxes are cleared away and the students are happy and the emotional closure is handled.
The advisor is still staring at a hard drive containing 40,000 unnamed JPEGs.
Exactly. And a dozen messy layout templates. The emotional celebration is over, but the digital hangover is just beginning.
This is where United Yearbook's philosophy gets intensely practical. We pivot from celebrating the people to preserving the product. They emphasize that you must organize and archive your files immediately.
Yeah, it's an exercise in cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading. Wait, explain how that applies here.
Well, when you're deep in a project, you hold a massive amount of invisible data in your working memory.
Oh, sure.
You know exactly which folder the spring track photos are in. You know that the principal's name is spelled with 2 L's, even if the directory is wrong.
Yeah.
But by September, that working memory is wiped clean. If you don't externalize that knowledge, offload it into a structured archive, you are essentially sabotaging your future self.
The source lists exactly what needs to be in this archive, too. It's event photos, the page templates, font and color information, theme development documents, the staff contact list, and, all the vendor and photographer information.
Think about the friction caused by not having just one of those items.
Oh, I've lived it. If you don't save the exact hex code for your school's specific shade of navy blue, next year's design editor might spend 3 agonizing weeks in October just trying to match colors by eye.
Yes, exactly.
Instead of designing a brilliant new cover, they are bogged down in forensic color matching.
That's why institutional memory is the defining characteristic of a successful program. You stop reinventing the wheel. I mean, if the vendor information is readily available, you don't lose days hunting down a phone number. You can spend those days innovating instead.
And archiving the files is really only half of building that institutional memory. The other half, according to the source, is evaluating the process itself. Conducting a formal postmortem on what worked and what you changed.
But the critical variable here is timing. You have to do this while the pain points are still fresh.
Right. They insist this happens immediately after submission. Because if you try to do a postmortem in August, you're only going to remember the massive, catastrophic failures.
Yeah, you'll completely forget the tiny, insidious friction points from November that actually caused the most delays.
Exactly. So what kind of questions are they suggesting teams ask during this evaluation?
They provide a highly specific list to run through with the team. Things like which deadlines worked well and where did we fall behind? Did we realistically have enough photographers to cover everything, or were we stretching 3 kids across 20 events?
Oh, that's a good one.
Did we start selling the yearbook early enough? Which spreads or pages were the most successful? And ultimately, what would we do differently next year?
It's a brilliant diagnostic tool because asking, did we have enough photographers, isn't just venting about the past, it's generating actionable data.
Right.
If the answer is no, then your first priority in the fall is recruitment, not theme design. It turns subjective frustration into objective strategy.
It really is like leaving a highly detailed survival guide for the next generation. You're translating a year of trial and error into a map that bypasses all the landmines.
And that evaluation process naturally shifts the brain's focus, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You can't critically analyze the past without inherently starting to formulate solutions for the future. Archiving and evaluating aren't just the end of the old project. They are the launch pad for the new one.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most controversial part of United Yearbook strategy, the infinite loop. They suggest using that launch pad immediately. The source states that the strongest programs out there actually begin planning for the next book before the current school year even ends.
Yeah, they do not wait for the fall semester to begin.
No, they're starting right now, in the spring. The actionable steps include recruiting next year's staff, choosing the new editors and leadership roles, starting the brainstorming sessions for theme ideas.
Planning the summer photography, which is huge.
Right, which they know includes things like summer sports, campus updates, and community events. And finally, setting concrete goals for next year's book and sales.
This is really the ultimate expression of their life cycle philosophy.
When I need you to help me reconcile something here because it feels like a massive contradiction.
Okay, what is it?
Earlier, we talked about how deeply exhausted these students and advisors are. Doesn't it border on cruelty to ask a burned-out teenager to start brainstorming next year's theme before this year's book has even physically arrived in their hands?
Sounds like a lot.
The source claims that starting this early actually reduces stress. How on earth does piling more work onto an exhausted plate reduce stress instead of just triggering immediate, profound burnout?
I love that you are calling this out because it completely defies our standard intuition about rest and work.
It really does.
To understand why United Yearbook recommends this, we have to look at the mechanics of decision fatigue and project pacing.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics.
Let's look at the alternative. What happens if you let everyone completely check out in May? Come September, the new school year starts.
Yeah.
You have a room full of new students who don't know each other.
Right.
You have no leadership structure in place. You have no theme, which means you have no design language. And yet your first major page deadline is probably just a few weeks away.
That sounds like a recipe for absolute panic.
It is. That frantic, high-stakes crunch time right out of the gate is what causes true, damaging burnout.
Yeah.
The pressure is too high before the team's infrastructure is even formed.
Ah, I see. So the spring planning is actually a defensive strategy against the fall panic.
Exactly. I like to think of it like crop rotation in farming.
Okay.
If you harvest your crops in May, the soil still holds residual nutrients. In this case, that's the team's creative momentum and established communication dynamics.
Right, they already know how to work together.
Yes. If you immediately plant the seeds for next year's theme in that same soil, the ideas take root easily. But if you leave the field bare until September, the creative soil goes cold, and you have to till it all over again from scratch.
That is a fantastic way to look at it. You're utilizing the existing infrastructure of the class while it's still intact. You have the veteran students right there in the room to help interview and select the new editors.
And by establishing the leadership and the theme in May, you are mitigating massive amounts of decision fatigue.
Yeah.
Brainstorming a theme in late spring, when the heavy lifting of actual production is over, can feel creatively liberating. It's pure ideation without the immediate pressure of execution.
And then they have the entire summer to just let those ideas subconsciously percolate.
Precisely. They can gather those low-pressure summer photos, the community events, the campus updates, basically building up a safety net of assets.
So when they walk into the room in September, they aren't staring at a terrifying blank page.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They already have a team, a vision, and a folder full of photos. The year-long journey ethos isn't about working harder. It is a highly effective pacing mechanism designed to protect the students' well-being.
A pacing mechanism? Wow, that reframes this entire document for me. It's not a list of extra chores, it's a blueprint for sustainability.
It really is.
And this perfectly highlights United Yearbook's overarching perspective. They aren't just a printer waiting at the end of the line for a PDF. They view their role as supporting schools through every single stage of this infinite loop.
They're advocating for a comprehensive partnership. From the early ideation and planning phases, through the grueling design and submission process, and all the way through the delivery and the post-mortem evaluations.
So when you zoom out and look at the whole picture, hitting submit really is just a pivot point. It's the moment the baton is passed from the creators to the community, and simultaneously from this year's team to next year's.
It's seamless.
By intentionally managing that distribution, taking the time to deeply recognize the staff's unique skills, meticulously offloading all that digital knowledge into an archive, critically evaluating the friction points, and planting the seeds for the future while the present is still happening, well, advisors are leaning into reality.
The reality that a project of this magnitude is a continuous, living ecosystem.
And for those of you listening who might be navigating this exact transition right now, whether you're wrapping up a yearbook or closing out a massive corporate initiative, our source notes that United Yearbook will be sharing even more detailed strategies in the coming weeks.
Yes, specifically focused on optimizing that distribution day and mastering the recruitment process.
Having a resource that understands the hidden psychology of the entire project lifecycle is an incredible advantage.
It really is a game changer.
If you want to dive deeper into their resources or connect with their team to see how they can support your program's infinite loop, you can reach out to them directly. Their email is info@unitedyearbook.net. You can also call them toll-free at 1-877-33-YEARBOOK. And if you're listening internationally, you can reach them at 909-373-4087.
The transition period is where the best teams really separate themselves from the rest.